Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 170, recording on Tuesday, May 26th. Guest for you today is Jon Ledyard. We've had him on the show before. I believe it was last year during week 2 of the season. Jon is the host of the Audibles and Analytics podcast that he co-hosts with Ollie Connolly, the Read Optional. He also he does a lot of film work and pre-draft evaluation. So was a really fun conversation getting to talk to him about his feelings on the Vikings 2026 draft. We also got into Kyler Murray. We began in an interesting spot with James Pierre, and think you guys will enjoy this show. OTAs for the Vikings begin today, Tuesday, May 26th. I will be out at the facility, the TCO Performance Center, on Wednesday, and we will do a show after that. That'll probably post live on Thursday morning on kind of the sights and sounds of probably the first opportunity we're going to have to see the quarterbacks out on the field. Can't wait for that. And we're going to begin this show today with 5 not popular, or maybe not the most top of mind guys I can't wait to see at OTA. So we'll start there. But first, if you're new here and watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. It helps us out. If you're already subscribed, you can get notifications. You can hit the like button. We aren't going to complain about any of that. Excuse me. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, please rate us over there. Give us 5 stars. Follow us at those platforms, and we really appreciate it. We do this show 2 times a week, every week, and have had an absolute blast getting to build this thing. So really appreciate the support. The show is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by really good people. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. They are Vikings fans. They have built a community bank with a phenomenal online banking platform, and they've got branches everywhere. So please check out First Resource Bank. Show is also sponsored by Pro MN Athletics. What is Pro MN? You guys probably asking. Well, if your kid plays football, or if you have friends whose kids play football, you need to know about Pro MN. Why? Well, it was started by 3 guys who wanted to enhance youth football development here in Minnesota. They have camps. They do a 7-on-7 league in the summer, and it's really like a mentorship program for young kids to then meet like-minded kids who have visions and dreams of playing football at a high level. So Pro MN, cannot thank them enough for their support, and we've enjoyed being a partner with them over the last month and a half, 2 months or so. So with that, we're going to begin here. So the 5 names of guys who I can't wait to see and follow and track and observe at OTAs, who are not top of mind probably in terms of the quarterback competition. We're staying away from quarterbacks and going to stay away from Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, the guys who are clear and obvious in terms of enjoyable to watch, lead, run around, work out, catch passes, etc., throw passes, etc. So the 5. All right, we're going to start with Christian Darrisaw. This is probably the most obvious of the bunch. Christian had the surgery to repair the torn ACL, MCL in October of 2024, I believe. We are now probably coming up past a year and a half from that, coming up on 2 years this October. And given the season that Christian Darrisaw had in 2025 and the lack of, I'd say, just continuity in terms of when he played, how long he played, how effective he was when he played, to see him through these OTAs, these voluntary OTAs, to see how active he is, to see how engaged he is, to see how explosive he looks, all of those are going to be top of mind for me as I walk out to the practice fields beginning on Wednesday. So number 1, Christian Darrisaw. Number 2, Ty Felton. It feels a little bit to me like just because the Vikings added Juwan Jennings and aren't ready to hand the reins right over for the wide receiver number 3 job to Ty Felton, that like he's just out of sight, out of mind, and the development's over, and Ty Felton won't make it. It feels like that's an opinion from some folks. I'd say I can't wait to see in year 2 for him, just what he looks like as a route runner, the consistency with which he catches the football. Like, I think those are the two most important things for him is just, can he catch the ball consistently? And can he separate? Can he get open? How sharp is he going to be from a route runner? But I've said this on the podcast before. Ty Felton is a really sharp dude who really wants it. Keenan McCardell evaluated him and really liked him coming out of Maryland. And so just because, yes, you as listeners of the show, as viewers of the show, no question I'm with you in wanting guys to step in as draftees and impact immediately. If that's not going to happen, development over time, as long as that player reaches their ceiling, is critical. And we saw with Jalen Naylor, it took him 3-4 years. That's not to say that it's going to take Ty Felton that long. It's not going to say that. That's not to say that he's going to be what Jalen Naylor was. But to evaluate him now in his second offseason, entering the season, I'm interested in it, whether that makes me on an island or not. Number 3, Gavin Gerhardt, the 7th round center from Cincinnati. I will say this, excuse me, talking to people from Cincinnati, they just absolutely rave about Gavin Gerhardt, the leader, what he meant for that program, his ability as a teammate to bring people alongside him, his ability in game to adapt to defensive rotations, to pick stunts games, to identify just based on alignment what the defense was doing to get Cincinnati in the optimal play and optimal run and really make adjustments that weren't even discussed pregame. So the question for me with Gavin Gerhardt is, like, physically, from an explosiveness standpoint, from a strength standpoint, what does he look like alongside the other guys? What are people saying about him? What is kind of the vibe, and just in terms of just his confidence level and conviction assimilating to this professional environment? Like that for me is, he's one I've always got my eyes trained to follow guys who are connectors and who have impacted programs like he did in college, and who kind of have that internal motivation that they're going to make it work one way or another. And when you talk to people around Gavin Gerhardt, it's just, I'd say, like, there's that light bulb flashing in front of my face of, there's too much. I've heard too much from people who I trust and respect, both in that former program and also just like people who have been a part of the evaluation, not to at least provide or place real emphasis on what I'm seeing from Gavin Gerhardt. Number 4, Dylan Bell. So I was going to pick an undrafted rookie just to follow, and like there's some interesting ones. Brett Thorson, the punter from Georgia, Jacob Thomas, the safety from James Madison, but Dylan Bell, the receiver from Georgia, who, I say receiver, but I mean, they handed the ball to him. He's kind of a thicker build. He's a playmaker. It felt like Georgia in some ways had a little bit of difficulty trying to figure out, like, what is the optimal role. And I expect, if that was the case, given the smarts of the staff down there, like, it might be a similar situation here. But just, in what areas is he working from a positional standpoint? How explosive does he look if he has the ball in his hands? Like, the fluidity, all of that for me. I just think of the undrafted guys, he's too explosive with too much pedigree not to keep my eyes on. So he's number 4. And then number 5, and this will come up late in the conversation with John, but when the Vikings traded Jonathan Grenard, I definitely wrote that night that this places a massive just amount of responsibility and need for impact from Dallas Turner. And the more I've thought about it, specifically with the edge rusher room and where it is right now from a depth perspective, like, Dallas Turner is just going to need to be a stud. Like, he just is going to have to be in 2026 for this team to reach its potential. If it goes right, if Caleb Banks is healthy, if Dominique Orange is active, and all of those kind of bets that the Vikings are making on the front go right, then this defense could be really dominant. but Dallas Turner's place amongst that is huge. It's massive. It can't be overstated. So out on the practice field, I want to see it. Like, Jonathan Grenard is no longer there. You are now number one or number two in these edge rusher drills and attacking it with a new defensive line-ish type coach and Ryan Nielsen, who is going to probably bring the best out of these guys. I can't wait to watch and see. So those are the five: Darisaw, Ty Felton, Gavin Gerhardt, Dylan Bell, Dallas Turner. Who am I missing? Who are you guys curious about? Who do you want me to keep eyes on? Let me know in the comments section or on social media at Alec_Lewis, at Alec Lewis Show. And I promise I'll get some feedback for you over the next couple days, over the next week. Mandatory mini camps upcoming. So should be out there a good amount. And we'll be see if I can bring you guys as much information as possible. With that, let's hop right into our conversation with Jon Ledyard of Audibles and Analytics. All right, Jon, welcome back to the show. Appreciate you taking the time. How's the summer been?
Oh, man, it's been awesome. Full-time job really picks up in the summer, so I don't get to as much tape study and all that fun stuff like I do the rest of the year. But, man, absolutely love it. Having a blast and excited to talk some Vikings with you.
Yeah. First of all, I appreciate it. It's warm here finally for the first time since last August, so enjoying it. But we'll start where all podcasts should begin. You mentioned tape study. The first person I thought of when the Vikings signed James Pierre, and the folks listening are like, Alec, you're going to start this podcast with James Pierre, but that's what we're going to do. First person I thought of was you because of the amount of Steelers defense tape you've watched, for better or worse, probably over the last X amount of years. Just talk to me a little bit about James Pierre. Like, when, this is a cornerback who we'll see what role he plays, but you were kind of intrigued by him, it sounded like. So I'm just curious, like, what people should know about James Pierre.
Well, yeah, complicated player, I think, to talk about, because for most of his career, he was just a special teams player. That's just who he was. He was a special teamer. He was the fourth or fifth corner. That was a great scenario. If he was your fourth or fifth corner, when he had to start, when he had to play, it wasn't good. The lack of speed was really exposed. His technique wasn't good enough to make up for it. He's always been able to tackle. He's always been physical. He's always been up for the fight. That, at least, has never been in question. But yeah, the rest of it was kind of like, yeah, this guy's going to be a career special teamer, career fourth, fifth corner. That's what he is. And they kept bringing him back. It was like, is he going to be back this year? And he's back, and he's at the bottom of the roster, and that was just kind of who he was. And you just don't really see trajectories change like that. But here he is, late 20s or something, and like he has this breakout year this past year. And it wasn't your typical breakout year where like you just didn't notice him and he was solid and he started and he didn't get attacked. He was pretty much unbelievable. Like the ball skills, I mean, you've probably already gotten a chance to see the tape now since they signed him a while ago, but the ball skills, the high end plays, the amount of times he made an unbelievable play to break on a pass, just the anticipation, being able to play off the ball changed the game for him. He's this big, strong corner, and I think a lot of people wanted to make him a press man corner, and that is when I think he's at his worst. I think in systems where you keep his eyes on the ball, read and react, sounds like what he's going to be playing in. I think he's a much better player. There's limitations maybe at times just athletically, but he can make plays on the ball. He has gotten smarter every single year that he's played. He's just continued to develop in terms of how he sees and attacks what's happening in front of him. And then the tackling has always been, like I said, a strength, the run support. Like he will play in that area. It's not perfect, and he's not played that much defensive football for me to have like this super strong idea of how he'll be as a full-time starter all season long. But I mean, he was one of the guys that saved the season. Basically, everything about the Steelers' offseason plan was a disaster, and defensively it didn't work out at all. Darius Slay ends up not even being on the team by the end of the year, and his ability to step in and say it was one of the things that saved them as a guy they never thought they'd have to ask to be able to play that way. So it was an awesome half season in Pittsburgh. I don't know. It came out of nowhere. I was like, what is going to happen to him in free agency? Because he was truly awesome, and they should try to bring him back. They prioritized Asante Samuel Jr., so finally he's actually good, and they let him leave, which is hilarious, I think, but also new regime coming in. So I'm totally fascinated with how it's going to work out for him in Minnesota, because it was not a nondescript good last year. It was an exclamation point good last year, where there was hardly any negative plays, and there were probably like 15 high-end cornerback plays in the season, and it was really remarkable to see.
Well, I think the thing you said that stands out on tape is like the anticipation and his ability to see it. And it was a no-brainer, obviously, for the Vikings because they hired Gerald Alexander, who was in Pittsburgh and watched and probably played a role in that development as much as anybody in recent years. And I think it is funny, like people still, in some ways, probably when they hear Flores, they think, the press man, Miami, but this scheme here in Minnesota, and you guys talk about this all the time. Like it is very much a read and react kind of style. Okay, 4.5 minutes in, and we talked James Pierre, but I really the reason I want to have you is because your thoughts on the Vikings draft, I thought were really interesting, and nationally, people had a lot of opinions on this draft. It was obvious. I mean, there's no doubt it was very coach-driven. Some of the prospects definitely have flags. But the question to you is, why do you think your perception of this draft was what it was, maybe by comparison to others? And I know you probably haven't paid attention to everybody, but I just wonder why your probably reaction to the draft was what it was.
I can't remember the name of the person who puts out the composite grades, or maybe there's multiple people that do it, but somebody put out composite grades, I know, of a bunch of evaluators, and the Vikings, I think by average had, I think they were like in the bottom 4 grades by consensus based on other evaluations. And I would say I just totally disagree with that. I don't know if I'd say they're in the top 7 or 8 for me, but they, I just really like their draft because it fit their team. And people are like, oh, it's clearly the coaches had a lot of influence there. And I'm like, yeah, and like that should have been what they were doing this whole time, frankly, other than, Quezzy running the show. Obviously, like there were some things that they did mostly in free agency and trades that were helpful to them in terms of roster building. But almost everything in the draft, was poor for them for a long time. Now, Kevin O'Connell, who I love, but deserves his fair share of blame for at least what looks like now with J.J. McCarthy. We'll see what happens this season. I think he should be allowed that. But I would just say that from a draft perspective, that was the whole point. That was why they let Quezzy go when they let him go. And people were like, oh, what's going on? They were like, we're going to let the coaches and Brzezinski working with them, we're going to let that be kind of our guide to how we approach the draft this offseason. And so I just think it made a lot of sense to execute from an executing a plan perspective. They got what they needed, and they got the types of pieces defensively that are going to fit with Brian Flores. I think that much is clear. Now, you can argue whether his scheme has limitations or whether long-term you think that's a good goal for a team to have, but that was the approach to this draft, and they did that in this draft. So you can argue whether you think the approach or not was good, or whether they should maybe, be as once they hire a GM, like who should be calling the shots basically in those situations. But I would just say, given the position they were in, I think they executed what they wanted to in a draft where there wasn't a lot of unbelievable talent. I thought they got a lot of really good players that will be helpful to them throughout the course of the class. So I just really liked what they did. I thought, I think people are looking for something that, and they wanted the first round pick obviously to come with less questions. It surprised them. But I see the vision, even if there is some risk involved.
Yeah, and I think it probably makes sense to start there. I think that the Caleb Banks pick at that spot, given where he had probably gotten to on most of the consensus big boards, probably got to people as much as anything else. I remember listening to you and Ollie, and I think I had even, I think I shot you DMs like, I can't wait till y'all talk about the interior defensive linemen because I'm so curious how you talk about them with this specific draft, because it was just widely regarded when you're talking, you talk to people within the league, even in the public eye, like there's just not a bunch of these interior defensive linemen that probably were worthy of pounding the table for in many instances on all, in terms of 3 down guys. And when you guys spoke about Caleb Banks, like I remember, like I think I was just laughing kind of listening to the evaluation. When you say you see the vision, as far as him in this specific scheme playing up and down the line, like in the event that he does stay healthy and it is maximizing his talent, what do you see as possible?
He and Jalen Redmond, I think, could be 2 dominant pass rushing, penetrating interior defensive linemen in a scheme that wants to play fast and physical up the field defense. There's no doubt this guy fits. Caleb Banks fits, and that's what he does best. I think his pad level for a guy his size is unbelievable. They have not had a player, I don't think, physically really like him in the time that Flores has been there that I can think of. And so I would say that is probably one of the more enticing upside moves of the class is, yeah, obviously there's huge downsides, probably one of the biggest risk reward non-quarterback picks, maybe the biggest in the class is just you're looking at it and you're saying, well, this guy could be, I mean, there's legitimately tons of reps in college that remind you of Chris Jones, and he wasn't as consistently dominant as Chris Jones, but then also watch how Florida asked him to play, and from the square stance, and he's got both hands in the dirt, and it's kind of like, he's not really firing off the ball up the field. He's not really on attack mode very often in that defense. And then he barely played this past season. So there's a lot really of guesswork kind of involved a little bit with him. There's a lot of just hoping and thinking, but traits are unbelievable. If you go back to the year before, you'll see some of the dominant high-end tapes that had people talking about him in the top 10 range as a prospect. Then he simply just doesn't play because of an injury. It wasn't that he played poorly. It's just that he simply didn't play hardly at all. He played 3 games because of injuries, and then he gets hurt again at the combine. And so it's all red flag stuff. If it hadn't been for the injuries and he played at the level that he last put on tape, and he put on tape the year before last, then I think people would have been totally fine with this pick. So it's really people putting on their doctor's hat and saying, well, we don't think he's going to stay healthy. And they might be right. But it's a guess. We don't know. We have no idea. We don't see the medicals. We just know kind of, oh, yeah, the optics of it look bad. He's a big guy with lots of foot injuries. And if it doesn't work out and he has 4 foot injuries, it'll be pretty easy to say, see, we told you. And if it does, nobody will ever remember that they criticized it. So I just think it's sort of a medical area, which 100% it's a risk. I just have no idea the level of risk compared to what other people in the medical field that's seen his reports. Other teams would be able to tell me better than I would. So to me, I'm like, yeah, this kind of player moves the needle, wins games. There's nobody else like him in the class, in my opinion. I thought he was clearly the top defensive tackle in the class, especially if you're looking for a pass rush potential guy. Maybe not the highest floor, but I thought easily the highest ceiling. The only guy in the class, in my opinion, that had the potential to be special or even close to the conversation as special. So if you want one, take him. But, in the level of risk you're associating with that is just based on whatever your medical report was. But this isn't the kind of pick that if it pays off, is just like, oh, well, it doesn't really move the needle. No, it moves the needle, like dramatically moves the needle. So to me, that's just kind of a risk I'd be willing to take, especially if obviously they did sign off on the medicals. So if my doctors are telling me, yeah, we don't think there's like the highest chance of reoccurrence or, whatever, like then, yeah, this is a risk I'm willing to take.
I think you guys might have used Joel Embiid. It might have been Ollie who said that. I don't know. Maybe it was you. I don't want to credit, but I remember listening to that and being like, that is so good. And I don't know if does that make you feel like if it becomes what he's become, are you just okay with it? The guy's been a stud. I think you're totally okay with that. But I love that comp.
Yeah, you're totally okay with it. It is a funny comp. I mean, you're totally okay with it, especially because in football, it's not like you're as reliant on one player. Like Joel Embiid gets hurt now, it's like 76er season's like over, right? But when football, you don't necessarily have that much riding on this pick. If it works out, huge payoff. If it doesn't, it's, lots of picks don't work out. Like, it's not like it's impossible. There's other rounds in the draft, more rounds in the draft than in basketball. There's just way more ways to get this thing done. You already have a really good player in Jalen Redmond, who I think people are still not talking probably enough about. So, yeah, I think it's a fair comp, but I would say the downside risk is a lot less than probably would be in the NBA in that situation. Although I don't remember who else was in that class, but yeah, point taken. So.
Yeah, I think the other guy, it sounded like you loved the fit, was Jacoby Thomas, the Miami safety. And I've said for me, it's like, it felt like, my favorite pick probably of all of their 9, just in terms of in terms of play style, in terms of what he can do on the field, in terms of just like mentally the acumen that's required to play in this defense. I just felt like it was, and it sounded like, as the rounds progressed, it was like, if we could get this guy at 98, they had that pegged from very much the outset. But I guess the question to you is like, why in your mind is the fit as exceptional as it is with that guy?
Everything he does is full 110%, like full speed. He doesn't like to do anything slow. Sometimes that can get him in trouble. It's safety. Sometimes you do need to play a little bit slow. Like he can overshoot it at times. And, there are examples on tape you can find of him busting a little bit, just getting too eager to come downhill. So there's some of that. I would say in Minnesota, those things are going to be camouflaged a lot because he will be point and shot more than he will be sit and hold. And so it's a great fit for him in that way because he's already going to a system where everybody's used as a weapon, basically. And that's basically Brian Flores' approach, right? Like, we're going to bring this weapon to the fight. What if all 11 of my guys were just weapons? Like, what if that happened? You know what I mean? And so if that's your mindset as a defensive player, I think Jacoby Thomas just fits perfectly. And it's why he was so effective in Miami too, is because they used him in that capacity. So I've talked about like the Hufanga potential with him a little bit, and just a guy who I think will fly around and make a lot of things happen. There is a havoc wreaking ability to him as a blitzer that got overshadowed probably because of Bain and Messidor and Keontae Scott. But when Thomas blitzed, it was an absolute 5-alarm fire too. So I think that all these guys like are really effective that they drafted in certain roles and capacities. But Thomas to me is the one that has some splash play potential and the potential to be like people just didn't think he was going to go this high. And this is the range I saw him in. And I was one of the few people I think who had an evaluation on him that was higher than some of the guys like Zakee Wheatley, who ended up going way lower. So I just really didn't agree with consensus on most of the safety stuff. A lot of the safety stuff in this draft outside of the top guys, the depth of the class. And so Thomas is one of those guys I would have bet on earlier than most. And I think he goes to a system that's going to allow him to be like the attacking type of player that he really is. And then the tone setting stuff too that he brings to the table will fit well too.
We will get right back to the conversation with Jon in a second. But first, a word from one of our new sponsors, Great Clips. I am looking forward to getting my hair cut here shortly. And I mean, what's the easiest way to go about it? You can literally go to greatclips.com, type in your zip code. They will show you the closest salon. You want to go in and out. You want to get your hair styled quickly. You want to walk out with new shampoo or new clay to make your hair look much better than mine. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, then you go to greatclips.com. They make it really easy for you. And like I said, they've got a ton of product, a ton of ways to supplement your haircut optimally. So highly recommend Great Clips. Their information is in the description, and we can't thank them for their support. Let's get right back to the show and the conversation with Jon Ledyard. Yeah, I think I talked to Corey Otherman. He was talking about the aggression, the havoc, all that stuff. And I was like, was he ever too? And he just cut me off. No. Like Otherman was like, no, guys are not playing more. And it's funny because of his disposition on the sidelines and everything. But I remember in the call just being like, all right, thank you, Coach Otherman. I appreciate to segue from the draft stuff, I mean, the quarterback thing is everything here. I don't know how much you guys have talked about Kyler's fit here with Kevin O'Connell and in this offense. I've talked about it enough where the people watching and listening to this are probably tired of hearing me talk about it. So, I mean, when you guys, I haven't heard you guys talk a lot about Kyler in general, but just how do you think of him as a player, and what comes to your mind when you consider the fit in this specific scheme?
I think we'll probably do off-season grades for all 32 teams, probably do them by divisions in a podcast series that's going to happen over the course of the summer. So I think that's when we'll probably get into most in-depth discussions on him and the fit and all that kind of stuff. But it's a fascinating one, and I think everybody says that, but I think it's partially because no one really knows what Kyler Murray is best at. You know, Cliff Kingsbury probably had it figured closer more than anybody else, I think, just in terms of the way he was using him, spreading the field and let him point and shoot. But then he isn't consistent enough with that to be good either. Like the one thing Kyler hasn't shown at all is consistency. He's shown a little bit of ability in all the offenses he's played in, but he hasn't shown a lot of consistency, period. So I tend to think he's not going to find consistency. This is just who he is. There's heaters. There's moments where he just as a creator is so transcendent that it's going to win you ball games and people are going to talk about him as an MVP candidate for a couple weeks, but it'll always come back around because he doesn't consistently play well within the structure of an offense. He doesn't consistently play in time. He doesn't consistently trust. I don't think he consistently understands the picture when it changes post-snap. So all those limitations are probably there. Then there's the stylistic elements of O'Connell's offense and just what is that going to look like? At some point, O'Connell is going to have to figure out the run game and making it happen at a more dynamite level. As much as I love him as a pass game and quarterback floor raiser and overall roster floor raiser and just leader, I think all those things, the inability to figure out the run game and to be able to build a passing attack off of a run game rather than just have it be your whole entire offense is really crippling to them. And in today's NFL, it's starting to become more and more and more important all the time. And we're seeing the effects of not being able to do that, as well as quarterback issues with Minnesota's offense last year. So that to me is almost a bigger story than Kyler's fit in this offense. I don't think there is like much I would say there's probably not this crazy ceiling for Kyler Murray compared to where people see him just because of talent. I just don't think he'll ever be that guy. But, Sam Darnold just won the Super Bowl. Like, Jalen Hurts has been in the Super Bowl twice. He's super inconsistent. Like, there's just, if the other stuff is in place, you can start to dream like about what that looks like with him, like as a floor guy. Then it gets interesting. But teams, other than in the draft, where I think you should probably chase ceiling a little bit at quarterback, when you can't do that or don't have that option, you need to chase floor a little bit more than teams do. And especially when you're Minnesota and you just had a winning record with the worst quarterback play throughout the course of the season, collectively as a group, probably in the league or certainly in that conversation. Like, you're like, okay, well, how do we just get competency in here? And, he can do that. But again, if the whole offense is on his shoulders, you're probably going to end up in a similar position where, like, maybe you win another game or two, but it's just still not good enough at the end of the day. So I think more than anything, you have to figure out how to build the thing around him so that there isn't as much onus on him to be awesome and that you have other arrows in the quiver. They just don't have that right now. Like, that's not been his offenses. He's done a great job of getting more out of quarterbacks in a system that the quarterback needs to probably do a lot for them to win. But generally speaking, they haven't had enough other things to go to, and they need more buttons to push.
No, I mean, I think it's extremely well said. And the run game is something that, I mean, everyone here is probably too tired of me talking about it. But they've talked really this offseason. They brought in Frank Smith, who was the OC in Miami. He's the assistant head coach. They've talked about wanting to transition a little bit more into a wide zone, outside zone, probably oriented system and probably more have an identity there. The question, I guess, for me is how do you then evolve that identity to where you are strictly an outside zone, wide zone based team with the quarterback type of, play that Kyler Murray gives you? I guess in that former fashion, maybe you're building kind of a naked keeper game directly off the outside zone that is very sensible, that you can maximize because Kyler is athletic and he does have the arm to push the ball down the field. Like that could be the ultimate vision, but I think you're right to talk about it because to make him or to make Kyler Murray be a Josh Allen type player, and even as I say that name, they've had a phenomenal run game in Buffalo in recent years. Like I don't think that is going to be a path. So I think you're right to mention it, but I wonder how more of a wide zone, outside zone identity style team fits with him as a quarterback, and if that really can be an answer. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that is a huge key. I mean, I think is just how multiple can they be as an offense. That's been probably my biggest criticism is that the league has just kind of moved away from these wide zone heavy rushing attacks. And so the ability to be multiple as an offense and to build an offensive line that can be multiple too is critical then. And that's why so many teams are going back to the pulling and the power and the gap stuff, because it allows you to build more passing attack elements out of some of that stuff. And so you can still have the wide zone stuff mixed in there for sure. But there was a time not that long ago where teams were either building the whole plane out of wide zone or they weren't doing it at all. And now you have to be able to do it without being able to spend as much practice time on it. And that's difficult, but it's still better than doing it all the time, not very well. So that's the balance he needs to find.
Absolutely. Is there anything else with this team that you find very interesting? Maybe it's the GM search circumstances. Anything team specific that it's like, I can't wait to see that, or I'm looking forward to that.
I think that I would say Dominique Orange, just the draft pick. I just really like him as a player. I think he's a dominant player in the mold of what they were trying at what he does, which is run stuffing. And that has some versatility, move him down the line, a little more rush potential as a run stuffer. They didn't overpay for it. They took in the range. You probably should take that in. So I would say that's another interesting element of the team for me is just watching him play. The recent signing of Juwan Jennings is one that I'll have my eye on pretty closely. This team has just really not had a wide receiver 3. Now they get one of the better ones in the league. And so I am pretty shocked that he was just kind of available. I don't know if it's a health thing. I don't know if it's a personality thing or what it is. If it's a personality thing, I'm not that worried about that in Minnesota, just with the stability and the culture that they've built. But either way, I just think, again, a couple things. He could be, and again, it's a late signing. It's kind of a throw-in signing for cheap. I'm trying not to make more out of it than it could be. But if they had targeted him early in free agency, I would have been like, what does this mean for what this team's going to do running the football? Because this guy just came as a weapon type piece for an offense that ran the football in a lot of versatile ways. So and one of the greatest run game guys of all time, loved him on the field in those situations. So what are we thinking here? Like, what is this guy going to expand the menu for you? Because he could, and they haven't even. I mean, the wide receiver 3 spot's been like, who's a returner, who's a slot, who can catch pass on third down when we have to go to 11, like who's going to get open against man coverage. That's how they've processed this.
Yep.
That's just not, Jennings is way more than that. So to me, that's the first, everybody on defense they add, it's like, good, we're getting younger, we're getting players who do what we do, more what we do. That's okay. What we've done has been pretty successful. Like, we've built some great defenses. We're going to get younger, faster, more depth. We tried last year to like buy all these guys, Hargrave and Allen, all these guys, and that didn't work. So we're going the other way. I understood all that. This is the first move to me that's like, hold on a second. Something could be different here if you wanted to be, in terms of how you're building this thing out schematically, offensively. And now you have like kind of a linchpin piece that helps you be able to do that, where that's just not Justin Jefferson. That's not Jordan Addison. That is not who they are. And so I am just totally fascinated by that. I think that part will really matter. And then, just Donovan Jackson, I really loved him as a prospect and just want to see if he can make the leap. I thought last year there were some really good things. It all kind of fell apart for the offensive line. Yeah. Now he gets a full season, hopefully, next to Darisaw. That really helps. I mean, I don't think, Ryan Kelly obviously was hurt and then wasn't necessarily what they were looking for. I don't know that Blake Brandel's going to be like moving the needle for anybody, but just to have stability there, hopefully, will be an improvement. But obviously a lot riding on him this season. If they can even have 4 or 5 spots be like really good, then the center spot just be passable, which is where plenty of teams are at in the league. You start to see like how this team truly is just give me competent quarterback play, and I truly trust that they could be an 11-win team. Yeah,
totally makes sense. And at the Brandel point, you guys have talked a lot about center play and where it is, and how just how many elite guys are there versus how many guys can get you by. And I think here locally there have been, I mean, from a fan perspective, it's like, are they really going to roll with Brandel? But I do think, to the point you guys often make on the podcast, like he is probably serviceable enough. And if you do have the rest of that group, then you can live in many ways. Like I do think that feels like the case at center. So it'll be interesting, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, he's only played for Minnesota, right? I think in his career, because
and they've bounced him. He's been a tackle, he's been a guard. Then they had him play center for the first time last year in London in Week 5 against Malik Collins, who's playing out of his mind, and Myles Garrett and that crew. So he's a smart guy, works really hard. They really like him, and I do think, I mean, it is in many ways a bet on, can Donovan Jackson take another step? Is Christian Darisaw going to be in there for every snap for the first time in a couple seasons? Will Fries, is he going to stay healthy? Like, if all of those things hold true, you can probably feel very okay with Blake Brandel, but we'll see over time.
The other thing that I think is just worth mentioning is that it's just a massive Dallas Turner season, massive.
I was going to ask you just, what you've thought of that ascent and his progression, or just, where he's come from in terms of what you thought of him as a prospect to what he's done, which isn't a ton, obviously, now through 2 seasons.
I had more doubts about him as a prospect than I think other people had. I would say, I'm pretty sure I was lower on him than consensus, but I was still probably too high in retrospect based on how it's turned out through 2 years. We'll see how it goes this year. But the first year, you just didn't even see any of the high-end stuff. So that really worried me, like where I was like, man, I don't even see the stuff that got me a little bit excited. So that's terrifying. Last year, you did start to see some of that stuff. You started to see some of those reps at least. So stability, full starter reps, mental workload. Is there really a year 3 breakout in here for a guy who's been kind of like they've been slow to trust with that kind of a workload? I'm honestly not sure, but they need it in the worst way. Like, if they're undone other than quarterback play, it will be by not having a good enough 4-man rush. Now, if everything hits, if he really jumps, takes a leap, Van Ginkel's not an unbelievable pass rusher, but he's a good player for sure. You certainly have the blitz potential, obviously the scheme, a lot of guys that can eat off that. I really like Jalen Redmond, Caleb Banks. You can see a path to where they have enough, but that to me is like a big, big question mark, obviously. He just carries. I mean, he's probably as much as any non-quarterback in the league for teams that are actual like hoping to contend. He's probably got to be one of the like guys that moves the needle one way or the other the most.
Yeah, and I think you say you could see a path, but also I could also see the path being clouded by boulders in many ways.
Yeah.
If
I mean, yeah,
Caleb Banks'
yeah.
health, Dominic Orange activity, Andrew Van Ginkel was hurt last year he missed 5 games. I mean, Dallas Turner again. If there's more attention paid to him, then the edge rusher depth is 3 former undrafted players in Chaz Chambliss, Bo Richter, and Tyler Batty. So it's a spot where I expect an addition at some point, but regardless, I do think you're right to bring it up, and he does shoulder a massive weight coming into this season. Well, John, I appreciate you hopping on. Wanted to do it since the draft, and always fun. Glad we got James Pierre in there. It was, just absolutely necessary. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me. Always a ton of fun, and we'll do it again sometime soon.
And that'll do it for episode 170 of the Alec Lewis Show. Appreciate John for his time. Didn't mention at the top, we're going to have a bunch of stories, at The Athletic this week. One based upon what I see Wednesday at OTAs, and then another shorter story Friday that should be pretty interesting for you guys on one of the draftees. So looking forward to that. Like I said at the top, we will be back later this week with an episode based on what I saw at OTAs. The show is presented by First Resource Bank. It's sponsored by Pro MN Athletics, great clips, and then Unreal, the clothing brand. I'm repping it right now on the lower half. Not going to show that on camera for the YouTube folks, but always repping Unreal, and cannot thank them enough for their support throughout the fall. And they've got limited edition hoodies every fall alongside this Vikings team. So really great partner, another one for us on the show, and can't thank them enough. So with that'll do it. Episode 170. We will talk to you guys very, very soon.